Carlos Castaneda, The Power of Silence. Forward. My books are a true account of a teaching method that Don Juan Matus, a Mexican Indian sorcerer, used in order to help me understand the sorcerer's world. In this sense, my books are the account of an ongoing process which becomes more clear to me as time goes by. It takes years of training to teach us to deal intelligently with the world of everyday life. Our schooling, whether in plain reasoning or formal topics, is rigorous, because the knowledge we are trying to impart is very complex. The same criteria apply to the sorcerer's world. Their schooling, which relies on oral instruction and the manipulation of awareness, although different from ours, is just as rigorous, because their knowledge is as, or perhaps more, complex. Introduction. At various times Don Juan attempted to name his knowledge for my benefit. He felt that the most appropriate name was Nagualism, but that the term was too obscure. Calling it simply knowledge made it too vague, and to call it witchcraft was debasing. The mastery of intent was too abstract, and the search for total freedom too long and metaphorical. Finally, because he was unable to find a more appropriate name, he called it sorcery, although he admitted it was not really accurate. Over the years, he had given me different definitions of sorcery, but he had always maintained that definitions change as knowledge increases. Toward the end of my apprenticeship, I felt I was in a position to appreciate a clearer definition, so I asked him once more. From where the average man stands, Don Juan said, sorcery is nonsense or an ominous mystery beyond his reach. And he is right, not because this is an absolute fact, but because the average man lacks the energy to deal with sorcery. He stopped for a moment before he continued. Human beings are born with a finite amount of energy, Don Juan said, an energy that is systematically deployed, beginning at the moment of birth, in order that it may be used most advantageously by the modality of the time. What do you mean by the modality of the time? I asked. The modality of the time is the precise bundle of energy fields being perceived, he answered. I believe man's perception has changed through the ages. The actual time decides the mode, the time decides which precise bundle of energy fields, out of an incalculable number, are to be used. And handling the modality of the time, those few, selected energy fields, takes all our available energy, leaving us nothing that would help us use any of the other energy fields. He urged me with a subtle movement of his eyebrows to consider all this. This is what I mean when I say that the average man lacks the energy needed to deal with sorcery, he went on. If he uses only the energy he has, he can't perceive the world sorcerers do. To perceive them, sorcerers need to use a cluster of energy fields not ordinarily used. Naturally, if the average man is to perceive those worlds and understand sorcerers' perception, he must use the same cluster they have used. And this is just not possible, because all his energy is already deployed. He paused as if searching for the appropriate words to make his point. Think of it this way, he proceeded. It isn't that as time goes by you're learning sorcery, rather, what you're learning is to save energy. And this energy will enable you to handle some of the energy fields which are inaccessible to you now. And that is sorcery, the ability to use energy fields that are not employed in perceiving the ordinary world we know. Sorcery is a state of awareness. Sorcery is the ability to perceive something which ordinary perception cannot. Everything I've put you through, Don Juan went on, each of the things I've shown you was only a device to convince you that there's more to us than meets the eye. We don't need anyone to teach us sorcery, because there is really nothing to learn. What we need is a teacher to convince us that there is incalculable power at our fingertips. What a strange paradox. Every warrior on the path of knowledge thinks, at one time or another, that he's learning sorcery, but all he's doing is allowing himself to be convinced of the power hidden in his being, and that he can reach it. Is that what you're doing, Don Juan, convincing me? Exactly. I'm trying to convince you that you can reach that power. I went through the same thing. And I was as hard to convince as you are. Once we have reached it, what exactly do we do with it, Don Juan? Nothing. Once we have reached it, it will, by itself, make use of energy fields which are available to us but inaccessible. And that, as I have said, is sorcery. We begin then to see, that is, to perceive, something else, not as imagination, but as real and concrete. And then we begin to know without having to use words. And what any of us does with that increased perception, with that silent knowledge, depends on our own temperament. On another occasion, he gave me another kind of explanation. We were discussing an unrelated topic when he abruptly changed the subject and began to tell me a joke. He laughed and, very gently, patted my back between the shoulder blades, as if he were shy and it was too forward of him to touch me. He chuckled at my nervous reaction. "You're skittish," he said teasingly, and slapped my back with greater force. My ears buzzed. For an instant I lost my breath. It felt as though he had hurt my lungs. Every breath brought me great discomfort. Yet, after I had coughed and choked a few times, my nasal passages opened and I found myself taking deep, soothing breaths. I had such a feeling of well-being that I was not even annoyed at him for his blow, which had been hard as well as unexpected. Then Don Juan began a most remarkable explanation. Clearly and concisely, he gave me a different and more precise definition of sorcery. I had entered into a wondrous state of awareness. I had such clarity of mind that I was able to comprehend and assimilate everything Don Juan was saying. He said that in the universe there is an unmeasurable, indescribable force which sorcerers call intent, and that absolutely everything that exists in the entire cosmos is attached to intent by a connecting link. Sorcerers, or warriors, as he called them, were concerned with discussing, understanding, and employing that connecting link. They were especially concerned with cleaning it of the numbing effects brought about by the ordinary concerns of their everyday lives. Sorcery at this level could be defined as the procedure of cleaning one's connecting link to intent. Don Juan stressed that this cleaning procedure was extremely difficult to understand, or to learn to perform. Sorcerers, therefore, divided their instruction into two categories. One was instruction for the everyday life state of awareness, in which the cleaning process was presented in a disguised fashion. The other was instruction for the states of heightened awareness, such as the one I was presently experiencing, in which sorcerers obtained knowledge directly from intent, without the distracting intervention of spoken language. Don Juan explained that by using heightened awareness over thousands of years of painful struggle, sorcerers had gained specific insights into intent, and that they had passed these nuggets of direct knowledge on from generation to the present. He said that the task of sorcery is to take this seemingly incomprehensible knowledge and make it understandable by the standards of awareness of everyday life. Then he explained the role of the guide in the lives of sorcerers. He said that a guide is called the Nagual, and that the Nagual is a man or a woman with extraordinary energy, a teacher who has sobriety, endurance, stability. Someone seers see as a luminous sphere having 4 compartments, as if 4 luminous balls have been compressed together. Because of their extraordinary energy, Naguals are intermediaries. Their energy allows them to channel peace, harmony, laughter, and knowledge directly from the source, from intent, and transmit them to their companions. Naguals are responsible for supplying what sorcerers call the minimal chance, the awareness of one's connection with intent. I told him that my mind was grasping everything he was telling me, that the only part of his explanation still unclear to me was why 2 sets of teachings were needed. I could understand everything he was saying about his world easily, and yet he had described the process of understanding as very difficult. "You will need a lifetime to remember the insights you've had today," he said, "because most of them were silent knowledge. A few moments from now you will have forgotten them. That's one of the unfathomable mysteries of awareness." Don Juan then made me shift levels of consciousness by striking me on my left side, at the edge of my rib cage. Instantly I lost my extraordinary clarity of mind and could not remember having ever had it. Don Juan himself set me the task of writing about the premises of sorcery. Once, very casually in the early stages of my apprenticeship, he suggested that I write a book in order to make use of the notes I had always taken. I had accumulated reams of notes and never considered what to do with them. I argued that the suggestion was absurd because I was not a writer. "Of course, you're not a writer," he said, "so you will have to use sorcery. First, you must visualize your experiences as if you were reliving them, and then you must see the text in your dreaming. For you, writing should not be a literary exercise, but rather an exercise in sorcery." I have written in that manner about the premises of sorcery just as Don Juan explained them to me, within the context of his teaching. In his teaching scheme, which was developed by sorcerers of ancient times, there were two categories of instruction. One was called teachings for the right side, carried out in the ordinary state of awareness. The other was called teachings for the left side, put into practice solely in states of heightened awareness. These two categories allowed teachers to school their apprentices toward three areas of expertise: the mastery of awareness, the art of stalking, and the mastery of intent. These three areas of expertise are the three riddles sorcerers encounter in their search for knowledge. The mastery of awareness is the riddle of the mind, the perplexity sorcerers experience when they recognize the astounding mystery and scope of awareness and perception. The art of stalking is the riddle of the heart, the puzzlement sorcerers feel upon becoming aware of two things: first, that the world appears to us to be unalterably objective and factual, because of peculiarities of our awareness and perception; second, that if different peculiarities of perception come into play, the very things about the world that seem so unalterably objective and factual change. The mastery of intent is the riddle of the spirit, or the paradox of the abstract, sorcerers' thoughts and actions projected beyond our human condition. Don Juan's instruction on the art of stalking and the mastery of intent depended upon his instruction on the mastery of awareness, which was the cornerstone of his teachings, and which consist of the following basic premises. 1. The universe is an infinite agglomeration of energy fields, resembling threads of light. 2. These energy fields, called the eagle's emanations, radiate from a source of inconceivable proportions metaphorically called the eagle. 3. Human beings are also composed of an incalculable number of the same thread-like energy fields. These eagle's emanations form an encased agglomeration that manifests itself as a ball of light the size of the person's body with the arms extended laterally, like a giant luminous egg. 4. Only a very small group of the energy fields inside this luminous ball are lit up by a point of intense brilliance located on the ball's surface. 5. Perception occurs when the energy fields in that small group immediately surrounding the point of brilliance extend their light to illuminate identical energy fields outside the ball. Since the only energy fields perceivable are those lit by the point of brilliance, that point is named the point where perception is assembled, or simply the assemblage point. 6. The assemblage point can be moved from its usual position on the surface of the luminous ball to another position on the surface, or into the interior. Since the brilliance of the assemblage point can light up whatever energy field it comes in contact with, when it moves to a new position it immediately brightens up new energy fields, making them perceivable. This perception is known as seeing. 7. When the assemblage point shifts, it makes possible the perception of an entirely different world, as objective and factual as the one we normally perceive. Sorcerers go into that other world to get energy, power, solutions to general and particular problems, or to face the unimaginable. 8. Intent is the pervasive force that causes us to perceive. We do not become aware because we perceive, rather, we perceive as a result of the pressure and intrusion of intent. 9. The aim of sorcerers is to reach a state of total awareness in order to experience all the possibilities of perception available to man. This state of awareness even implies an alternative way of dying. a level of practical knowledge was included as part of teaching the mastery of awareness. On that practical level, Don Juan taught the procedures necessary to move the assemblage point. The two great systems devised by the sorcerer-seers of ancient times to accomplish this were dreaming, the control and utilization of dreams, and stalking, the control of behavior. Moving one's assemblage point was an essential maneuver that every sorcerer had to learn. Some of them, the Naguals, also learned to perform it for others. They were able to dislodge the assemblage point from its customary position by delivering a hard slap directly to the assemblage point. This blow, which was experienced as a smack on the right shoulder blade, although the body was never touched, resulted in a state of heightened awareness. In compliance with his tradition, it was exclusively in these states of heightened awareness that Don Juan carried out the most important and dramatic part of his teachings, the instructions for the left side. Because of the extraordinary quality of these states, Don Juan demanded that I not discuss them with others until we had concluded everything in the sorcerer's teaching scheme. That demand was not difficult for me to accept. In those unique states of awareness, my capabilities for understanding the instruction were unbelievably enhanced, but at the same time my capabilities for describing or even remembering it were impaired. I could function in those states with proficiency and assuredness, but I could not recollect anything about them once I returned to my normal consciousness. It took me years to be able to make the crucial conversion of my enhanced awareness into plain memory. My reason and common sense delayed this moment because they were colliding head-on with the preposterous, unthinkable reality of heightened awareness and direct knowledge. For years the resulting cognitive disarrangement forced me to avoid the issue by not thinking about it. Whatever I have written about my sorcery apprenticeship, up to now, has been a recounting of how Don Juan taught me the mastery of awareness. I have not yet described the art of stalking or the mastery of intent. Don Juan taught me their principles and applications with the help of two of his companions, a sorcerer named Vicente Medrano and another named Silvio Manuel, but whatever I learned from them still remains clouded in what Don Juan called the intricacies of heightened awareness. Until now it has been impossible for me to write or even to think coherently about the art of stalking and the mastery of intent. My mistake has been to regard them as subjects for normal memory and recollection. They are, but at the same time they are not. In order to resolve this contradiction, I have not pursued the subjects directly, a virtual impossibility, but have dealt with them indirectly through the concluding topic of Don Juan's instruction, the stories of the sorcerers of the past. He recounted these stories to make evident what he called the abstract cores of his lessons. But I was incapable of grasping the nature of the abstract cores despite his comprehensive explanations, which, I know now, were intended more to open my mind than to explain anything in a rational manner. His way of talking made me believe for many years that his explanations of the abstract cores were like academic dissertations, and all I was able to do, under these circumstances, was to take his explanations as given. They became part of my tacit acceptance of his teachings, but without the thorough assessment on my part that was essential to understanding them. Don Juan presented 3 sets of 6 abstract cores each, arranged in an increasing level of complexity. I have dealt here with the first set, which is composed of the following: the manifestations of the spirit, the knock of the spirit, the trickery of the spirit, the descent of the spirit, the requirements of intent, and handling intent.